the diving can be really, really cool. A lot of divers think it means like poor visibility, cold water, but it's a small part of the story. Some of those things I've just said, though, but poor visibility and cold water can be benefits of those kind of dives.
Underrated side effect. When you come out, your skin doesn't feel dry or itchy. Your hair doesn't get super dry.
You can brush your hair if you have that kind of problem.
You just had a shower, yeah.
Welcome to Dive Around the World, the podcast that brings you stories, insights, and adventure from beneath the surface. Each episode, we explore the people, places, and passion that make diving more than just a sport.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Dive Around the World podcast. Today, I am with Adam, and we will talk about the newly released Freshwater Ecology. Super cool, new, exciting ecology program. Falls within all of our ecology programs. So really nice. Anybody can actually learn these programs, take these programs. If you want to add a dive to it, obviously you have to be certified, but you don't have to. Welcome, Adam.
Hey, nice to see everybody. I'm really happy to talk about this one. This one is the one that's been missing, right? We've got everything for marine environment. We've covered that with 9 different ecology specialties. And this is our missing piece of that ecology puzzle. So I'm really excited to tell people about it.
Yeah, they somehow always forgot about us freshwater divers. I mean, you're obviously in the UK, freshwater, a lot of freshwater. Yes, you do have saltwater, but a lot of freshwater. I grew up in Austria, only freshwater, no saltwater at all.
Yeah, I don't know,
if you're
a
going
lot
to the
of
salt
dive
mountains.
training. One, a lot of dive training happens in freshwater environments, especially in what we call retail markets, so local centres, and even some resort markets concentrate around the lake. This program we've seen be really popular in the US. If you imagine the size of the US, there's not a lot of coastline compared to the volume of the country. There must be a lot of diving that happens in rivers and quarries and lakes and those natural bodies of water. So yeah, very, very popular program.
Okay, so my most important question of the day, freshwater diving, is it underrated or is it just misunderstood?
Misunderstood. It's got to be misunderstood. The diving can be really, really cool. A lot of divers think it means like poor visibility, cold water, but it's a small part of the story. Some of those things I've just said, though, but poor visibility and cold water can be benefits of those kind of dives. What we want with this freshwater ecology program is to teach people the understanding of what's happening in those environments, why they are like they are. Why does the cold water, the lake, change temperature so much, but the ocean doesn't? Those are the kind of things that make it way more interesting and rewarding. I mean, that's why it's misunderstood.
Yeah, 100%. And the visibility thing I want to discuss because I've had by far the best visibility I've ever had in freshwater. Yes, there's been poor visibility, but on the other side of the spectrum, I've never had water this clear in any ocean or sea, saltwater.
Yeah. So obviously, you know Austria relatively well. You've got the Green Lake there, which is glacial filtered mountain water flooding a valley of grass. And it's some of the clearest, cleanest water you can possibly imagine. One of the interesting things about freshwater is quite often it's still, which means there's no tides. There is no current. There's no surge. There's no phytoplankton. There's no small animals in the water. There's a lot less, let's say, coral breeding happening in the water. So generally, if you're going to dive to see things. If you want coral reefs, you want big animals, you want pelagics, you want all that stuff, they need something to feed on and a place to breed and spawn, which means all that stuff's going to be in the water. And that's going to give turbidity. That's going to affect the visibility in the water. Freshwater is not like that. Freshwater, the breeding patterns are very much dependent on the temperature, and there's less spawning type activity. The water doesn't move, so you get this incredible visibility potential. You look at diving in Silfra in Iceland, you look at diving in some of the lakes in Austria, you look at diving, in really cold water, like Lake Baikal under the ice. You can have visibility that you only stop seeing where the light beam from your torch fades out.
It's one of the weirdest things if you're used to diving in water that has a little bit of plankton or just something in the water, like you were just saying. You can put your hand in front of your face. You cannot see water. Usually you see water. You can't see anything. It's so clear.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Amazing. A lot of this A lot of this water to get there has run through rivers, be them underground rivers like in Mexico or surface rivers like you see in Europe. This means that water is constantly filtered. And so you're diving in Evian, other waters are available. You're diving in fresh, clear, filtered water, which is going to give you some amazing visibility, of course.
Yep. And underrated side effect, when you come out, your skin doesn't feel dry or itchy, your hair doesn't get super dry.
You can brush your hair
You
if you
just
have
feel
that
like
kind
you
of problem.
you just had a shower, yeah.
You don't have to wash your kit. Great reason to dive in fresh water. Less equipment washing needs to be done.
Yeah, exactly. The lakes I used to dive in growing up, they're all even drinking water quality. So if a little bit of water gets in your mouth, not that I'm going to go and jug the water, but
it's not good.
if water gets, it's nothing. It's like sweet. It's mountain water. Delicious.
Absolutely. No, that's the cool thing. That's the cool thing. These lakes are super pure.
Yeah, 100%. And one thing, and that's when it comes to freshwater diving now. Yes, it's different. One thing you will not get and not experience as much as in the ocean is colors. You obviously, corals. It tends to be a bit more gray, green, bluish. But again, clarity might be an argument for it. And I think the environments you can dive in can also be very different. You talked about Lake Baikal, or even in Austria, there's a lake called Attersee, and there's the sunken forest where essentially the whole forest landslid with the trees standing up into the lake, and the lake preserved it. So it's like diving through the forest. It's incredible.
Yeah. We've got some of that in the quarries in the UK. I've seen that in quarries in the US where, they flooded areas, and where it was previously flooded, there was things there. And so you can have an entire forest. In the UK, one of the best places freshwater for me to dive is a reservoir close by called Lady Bower Reservoir. It's interesting because where they tested the bouncing bombs. So there's potentially bouncing bomb, not real ones, but demos in there. But the best thing about that is when they built the dam to flood the reservoir, they flooded a village deliberately. And so on low tide, you can see the spire of the steeple of the church sticking out of the water. So you can actually get in there. You can dive around the village. There's a bridge still there. You can go into the cellar of the church. And so this is actually super cool history that's in this freshwater environment as well. So yeah, really, really interesting how these environments get there. The natural ones and the man-made ones.
Yeah. And freshwater diving is usually for most people more accessible. It depends on where you live in the world. You live in the UK. Most of the US is also land-based. You just have a little bit of the coasts. Again, I am from Austria. There's no ocean, nowhere even close.
Yeah.
So we're completely landlocked, but I live in Johannesburg now, and even here there's a few bodies of fresh water around where you can go diving. To get to the ocean, 5-6 hours, usually. To get to freshwater, maybe not even an hour.
Yeah, and they're great places for things like keeping your skills up, building team awareness, doing practicing things like your SMB drills, rescue drills. Those kind of things are a great idea. Miracle Waters is the one near you in Johannesburg. I've been there doing that there. I go to the quarries and the lakes around to do training. It's a great idea to have this, let's say, controlled, still open water environment where you can do a lot of training before you put stuff into practice, potentially in current, in the sea, in the ocean as well. So they've really got a big place in our diving hearts.
So what made us at SSI now decide it's time for freshwater ecology?
So we are going through and redeveloping all of our specialties, of course. The ecology programs are new to SSI. They're not getting an update, but they did need finishing off. Like we say, we're missing that key critical factor. We've got the marine environments. We need the freshwater environments. It's something like, 30-something% of our divers are diving in freshwater regularly. And so something for those people. If you have a lake or a quarry or a river close by, this is going to give you the information to feel more safe and more comfortable diving in those environments. It is going to be something you can combine with your open water. You can do later as an experienced diver. So we see a good opportunity to provide, number one, part of our environmental responsibility as a company, and number two, ways to make divers more confident and capable in the areas they dive in for like 30% of our divers. So it really is time.
And I think it also helps a few of you out there who are listening to maybe encourage you not just to dive on your holiday. You can also dive at home. If you are sitting at home right now, you can go find your local dive center. If you have never done so, it's so important to find a local dive center for support and go speak to them about freshwater ecology.
Yeah, go on your SSI app
Adam.
at the bottom. Next to the
Yes,
plus, there's a little center locator. Hit center locator. Look for the red dots, they're your centers. Look for the black dots, they're the dive sites that are next to you. So if you've been sitting at home, never dived in your location, I think you'd be very happily surprised to press the center locator and figure out there's probably a dive spot much closer than you thought.
exactly. Let's talk a little bit more about the manual itself now.
Uh-huh.
So when I first heard, oh, we're doing freshwater ecology, I expected it to be like the fish of freshwater, like Fish ID, but for freshwater. But I was
Yeah.
actually very positively surprised that it's not just that, because that would have been, honestly, might have been a bit boring.
No, you're right.
So tell me a little bit more what surprised you about the new manual. Obviously, you helped writing it.
Yeah, so it's about how dynamic these water systems are. So we don't just say, okay, green fish with a red fin, green fish with a blue fin, green fish with a set of teeth at the front. You know, that generally, if you want to try and identify the fish, there's unique identifiers, and they're pretty cool, some of their lives, but we don't just focus on that. We focus on like how changing the systems are, how the water table interacts, how plant life, how visibility can be affected, and how all of these complex ecosystems and food webs all work together with each other. So the idea is that we talk about fresh water from rainfall all the way through to diving in it, you know, and all the things that could potentially get there, be in it, be part of it, and how they live and work together. So quite complex, would you believe it, the manual, not just, yeah, there's a fish.
Exactly. And it's really cool about the different plants that grow, but also the types of waters. I mean, obviously, there's a bunch of different types of fresh water. There's rivers, there's lakes, there's quarries, and just understanding maybe even the differences and what makes a lake and not just a little part of a river if it's a smaller one, right?
You know, I have
So
three
that's
quarries near me, right? And you can go to this one site and you can dive in these three quarries. One is like turquoise green water. You wouldn't believe how beautiful it is. Another one is green water, like actually, you know, dark green water. Really weird to dive in. And then you've got one that is like sea coloured, like a purpley blue. One has got a high copper content, one has got a really high algae content, and one is relatively unspoilt by the surrounding minerals. And so three different environments to dive in. Those have all got different chemical compositions, different animal life, different plants that survive in them, different ways to dive them, different bottom compositions. So completely different environments, and all three are within walking distance.
That's amazing.
Mm.
So I know this about you. You learned to dive in the ocean, right? Same, so did
Correct.
I. So was there ever, or when did you decide to go and dive in freshwater, and what changed your mind about freshwater when you because it was, for me, it was the same. I was like, I like the sea. I
I
don't
was a
really want to
holiday
go into
diver.
this lake.
I was a holiday diver, and I couldn't imagine
Yeah.
what you'd see, even in England, in the sea, let alone in a lake in England. So for maybe 8 to 10 years of my diving career, I was just diving on holiday. I was interested in marine life. I was interested in sea urchins and anemones and fish. That was what kept me diving. And it was a case of I couldn't travel as much as I wanted to dive, and I needed to find a way to dive more. The idea of swimming around in a tank, in like a fish in a bowl, in a swimming pool, wasn't really enough, you know, and I knew that it involved something else. I knew it involved a dry suit, and I knew it involved more training, and it sort of at the time put me off. I kind of said, well, I'm going to have to do all this extra effort to see less. But what worked for me was I got into a community, and this is generally how it works in like local regions. I started to meet people, got into a local community, and they all convinced me that it's not as bad as you think. You're not going to freeze, and that there's things to see. And so you had to just take people's word for it. Got in, and the first freshwater dive I did, I'd never been so close to fish. So one of the weird things about some of the lakes, especially near where I was diving, was this lake was full of trout, and the trout are big, and they are fed by hand by people, which means they'll come up to you and they'll bang into you and ask for food. where you don't get that in the ocean. And so I'd never been, even though I'd been diving for 8 years, I'd never been so close to a fish. I'd never been accosted by a fish that was in my BC pocket trying to see if I had any food for it. I didn't, of course. But yeah, it was super, super funny to be that close to fish. And I was like, wow, there's fish everywhere here. Big diamond sturgeon, also in that same quarry. And then you come across some of the uniquenesses of quarry diving, gnome gardens and planes underwater and cars underwater. And, there's a silo with bits welded on it to look like the Nautilus from 10,000 Leagues Under the Sea. And so I never dived in a bus. Would you believe it? So, you can swim in the back window of a bus, go up the spiral staircase and out the back window. It's super interesting, fun things to do. And that's what sort of made me want to learn to see more. As I saw more, I realized that there's a massive amount of things to do in freshwater in the UK.
Yeah, freshwater. I mean, it took me quite a few years. I grew up on a lake. So walk 3 minutes from my house to the lake. You swim there, everything. But it took me really long to do my first few dives there. But once I got into it, the rock formation, it's a fairly deep. In Austria, middle of the Alps, the lakes are fairly deep. So this is one smaller ones, 150 meters deep. But there is one wall you can dive that goes straight down to 90 meters. It has a few cracks. The cracks usually have fish in it, but the rock formations themselves, it's granite rock from the Alps. It just looks so incredible. And it's like, it's almost like you in space. And that is not something I've ever had when I was in the ocean. It feels like you're on a different planet in a way. And that is one thing it made it so cool for me. And
a lot of times I've had vertigo. Yeah, a lot of time I've had vertigo underwater. That fear of being high was in fresh water with these big walls, because if you go to the side of them, it's almost like you're rock climbing, right? It's so clear and there's no coral and stuff growing out of them, so you could feel like I could technically be hanging on and look down, and I am rock climbing essentially. So yeah, it's pretty awesome, the things you can see in some of the lakes.
Yeah, 100%. Does make it also a little bit dangerous, I have to say, because it's so hard to gauge, especially on that wall, because out of the water, it goes 100 meters up, but there it goes 90 meters down. And on that wall, usually the first 5 meters of the lake have a little bit of sediment, so it's dark, and then under it's super clear. So hard to judge where you are, especially if you're not 100% familiar with the dive site. You can, if you're just a little bit off your buoyancy, you can drop to 40 meters and not even know it, drop even deeper by accident. That's how often accidents do happen. So having somebody there with you that understands that water, or especially freshwater dive sites that might be a bit more dangerous where there's walls and things, you should always go with the local dive center.
100%. One of the things I always recommend to divers, especially if they are a holiday diver trying to dive in their home location, or they want to try a new location, is I always recommend them taking an access to local diving. Go and see a training center and say, look, I've never dived here before. What does it take? Because quite often it takes some training, and sometimes it'll take guiding. And so you can get both of those things together. You want to dive in, if you've never dived in a cold lake, you're going to need dry suit. Funny enough, you need navigation more in a lake than you do in the sea. Because if you pop up on the other side of the lake, there's no boat to pick you up and bring you back. You have to come back to where you started. That's where your car and your clothes are. So you better figure that out. So navigation could be equally important. Scooter diving, freshwater places are a great place for a scooter. You can't get long-term lost like you can in the ocean with a scooter, but you can go everywhere. And then you just pop up and you come back. So scuba diving is great in freshwater. Of course, we've got freshwater ecology now, which is the key to this presentation. But a lot of our specialties can have a little twist to them when you teach them as freshwater environments, that you might want to learn those things in that environment when you come to dive at home.
What are some other specialties that you can recommend for people who want to dive freshwater? So we obviously have freshwater ecology, but there's some other things.
Yeah. So dry suit diving is a key critical factor. Most of the lakes that we dive in have big temperature swings. Smaller bodies of water don't retain heat so well. So if it does get low air temperature in your region, the lake will generally be 3 to 4 months behind the air temperature. So you think, okay, February, March time is the coldest time in the lake. No, it's probably not. April, May is probably the coldest time in the lake because it's chilled down all that time and takes time to warm up again. So having a dry suit is a great way to be able to maintain body temperature, enjoy longer dives and get more comfortable. Other things that are really important are things like equipment techniques. because quite often these lakes you'll drive to. And then when you're there,
Mm.
there's not really the dive center support on the side of the lake. So you may need to be able to do things like, repair spring straps that might be broken on your fins, or change a mast strap, or be able to just be a little bit more self-sufficient would be a great idea if you're going to go lake diving. The other things that are great for lake diving, like I said before, navigation, DPV, they work quite well in lakes. What do you think? What was a specialty you've taken in one of your local lakes while you were there? Or you took them all?
Altitude.
Ah, altitude diving.
Altitude.
Good point.
Altitude, because all the lakes I've ever been, I've never been to a UK lake, I have to say. All the lakes
Mm,
I've ever dived in were in altitude,
good. And
500
Miracle
meters up.
Waters is altitude in Johannesburg, right? Lake
And even
Geneva's
in
quite
Austria where I grew up,
high.
um, the lake where I grew up is on like 600 meters. So not
Okay, good.
mad altitude, but still, that's a really nice one.
Computer diving.
Computer diving, 100%. And I think also, I mean, a few things that are important, obviously, as in any diving, stress and rescue and deep diving. Deep diving, I think, in a lake being important because of what I just said earlier, potential accidental drops, depending again which lake and what type of water you dive. But
Yeah.
if you ever find yourself at Wolfgangsee in Austria, I definitely recommend to go deep diving first.
And the one that everybody should have, right? Nitrox.
100%.
If you want to be doing a lot of diving, you got to have nitrox. So I think that's just an unwritten rule now with diving.
And there's nothing as refreshing on a hot summer day than doing a good nitrox dive in a lake.
Yeah. It brings your core
'Cause in
temperature
the
down.
sea, just
Come
everything,
out and have an
yeah.
ice cream
Hot,
with your friends, right? Perfect.
and you're not salty.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about ecology manual. When I flip through this digital book, swipe through it, what kind of experience am I getting?
So we obviously we do focus on visibility, temperature, water movement, etc. But we also have a lot of involvement in the living environment. So how plants, they create their habitats, how fish behavior and freshwater systems are connected. And then we look at the connections between the different freshwater ecosystems. So when you see that, then you start to realize that we've got this big structure in the manual that helps people, interact with what they're going to see in real life. Yeah, I think it's about making connections,
Okay.
right? If you learn a little bit about the freshwater environment, when you go and do the diving, then things will start to become more safe, and that more obvious, and then that'll make it more comfortable.
Yeah, that's amazing. The book in general, like we already talked about, it's really cool. What is something divers usually overlook in freshwater that the manual actually helps with?
Uh, so I think that people overlook the conditions. You know,
Oh,
everybody assumes that water's wet, bad visibility, good visibility, temperature. That's it. But it's not the case. There's so much more involved, especially things like bottom composition, rain, water runoff, how rivers impact in lakes, etc. So how the systems are connected together to create diving conditions. And evaluating conditions is a great skill. Normally, evaluating dive conditions, people gain at dive guide level. That's where we teach people about how to evaluate dive conditions, how to look at a dive. But what's the background of that? Where do I get that detailed information about how to evaluate the conditions? Well, this is the ecology program. If you want to learn about how freshwater environments affect the conditions, freshwater ecology is where you're going to find that information. If you want to know about marine environments, marine ecology is where you're going to find that information. So we've got those two programs there, and those two programs give you the background history to be able to evaluate your conditions. And it's conditions that I think we should focus on as part of this program.
so who is this manual for? Is it then, in what case you just described, is it only for dive guides?
No. It's for everybody, right? So obviously new divers, they get the foundation. So they get to understand the type of environment they're diving in. And experienced divers understand about how they can plan dives and how they can create like meaningful experiences in those environments by leveraging their knowledge of the environment. So it's either taking that information and making it into a more exciting dives, or it's taking that information and not being afraid of the dives you're going to do in those environments. So it just depends on your own level. The information's the key.
100%. For everyone out there, make sure you take this course, because it is not, even if you're a brand new diver and you don't even want to dive, like the two of us never wanted to dive in freshwater in the first place, you might just figure out that you actually really do want to dive in freshwater. It can be much
And
more exciting than you expect it to be.
even if you don't, even if you only dive in marine environments, do this course, because now you've got a reference. You can
Mhm.
reference what you're seeing about what's available in other environments as well. It makes you more rounded as a diver.
And just like all of our other manuals, this should become a part of your library, right? It's not just a read it once and finish forever. It's go back to it. I was like, oh, there's something about the freshwater. What was it again? Go jump in the book and find that section, get the information again and again, come back to it, repeat the information. Because that's only how really we keep up with information. We will not save everything we've ever read in our mind. That
No,
would be
and
nice.
the really cool thing, right, is about the new SSI system is everybody has a diamond manual now, right? Which means that they constantly have access to that manual for forever. That manual you go back and read. That manual, we are also updating them. If you look at the Blue Oceans program, we're adding sections to the Blue Oceans program all the time. And now our brand new AI tool, which is available in all courses really soon, you can go in and you can start asking it questions about freshwater environments. And guess what it's got now? It's got a much tighter, more specific reference material in terms of our content to answer your questions from. So you're not just getting that AI blah, blah, blah from Google. You're getting AI trained by SSI materials that are written by real people who know what they're talking about. So you want to find something out, that this is the place to find it, either in a specific manual or use one of our AI tools.
Yeah, and the AI tools, because they're trained only by our materials, they don't hallucinate like some of the other AI tools of the world tend to do. So it is really the information you get straight from the source. So that's what makes them
Correct.
100% and a lot safer also in this case. Is there a section in this manual that you think people will really love?
Oh, yeah. So I think they're going to like the environmental factors part, like talk about
Mm.
stratification and visibility changes. One of the weirdest things for me to dive through is like hydrogen sulfide layers. So rotting vegetation. It creates like
Yeah.
rivers underwater. And it's the weirdest thing you'll ever see, and you not only get them at the bottom, sometimes you get them at different layers held in by temperature. So I dive one quarry in Wales in England where the first 5 meters are fantastic visibility. From 5 to 11 meters, there is no visibility whatsoever. And you drop out that 11-meter window and then it's 150-meter visibility. And
Yeah.
I couldn't, for the life of me, figure out why there's this patch of mud. It feels like mud, just suspended midair in the water column. And when you drop through it, it's quite funny because if you drop through it at speed, there's like little tails of mud coming out into the good visibility. Super weird stuff. That's what I think people will like. This will also give you that feeling of, I've experienced that. Now I understand it. This is why it happened, 'cause it brings real life brings theory into real life.
Yeah, it is. It is. And just understanding it, first of all, and it makes you a lot cooler. So if somebody ever asks you at the pub in the evening, you're
Yeah.
gonna be able to spit out the facts.
Knowledge is power. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm a bit of a
Yes,
stats guy. I
knowledge
like that kind of thing.
is. What's something from the manual that divers can immediately take into their next dive?
Let's say light changes, how the environment shifts over time, how life is structured and interlinked with food webs. Like I said earlier, layering the stratification of water. So the diver basically flips from just observing to really understanding what they see in front of them. And
Mm.
that's like on the next dive. You will read it now and go diving in the afternoon and see that in freshwater environments. And so that's what's quite cool about it. It's directly applicable. It's not like doing, let's say, whale shark ecology and then go and dive in the south coast of England. You will not see one. I'm sorry, just won't happen.
And if
But
you see, maybe you have to check your breathing gas.
yeah, you're probably too deep for the gas you've got. So the answer is this stuff is really applicable to 99% of freshwater dives. And so that's going to make it really, really cool. You're gonna get stuck into it and see it straight away.
Okay. What would you say to the people who are like, no, I'm only an ocean diver?
It's simple. You're missing out. You're missing out. 70% of the world is water. Only like 2 to 3% of that is fresh water, and like 2.5% of that is locked in ice. So it's a small part. It's a very, very small part of our water. This is freshwater system. And we're experiencing this cool stuff that has to offer if you're freshwater diving. And you're missing that completely if you only dive in marine environments. So it forces you to understand conditions. It forces you to push yourself and do different types of diving, be it navigation, cold water, that kind of thing. So your diving will improve, your knowledge and understanding will improve, and your ability and comfort when you go back to marine environments will improve. It's a winner all round.
What would you say is your favorite or the best freshwater dive you've ever done?
So I think there's this same quarry we talked about in Wales earlier.
Uh-huh.
They have a tunnel at 74 meters, where they had a train track previously through, and the train track weaved its way up from the tunnel through the quarry and came out through this tunnel. But right at the bottom, at 105 meters, there's another tunnel, and very few people find it because when you're at 105 meters, you don't have a long time to look around. So when you get down there, there's a little slate on the wall. It's an A4 slate, and it's got everybody's name on it. Everybody wrote their name on it that found it, went to this slate. You go in. There's not a lot in there, to be honest with you. It's a small tunnel. You come back out, and then there's a blast hut, which is where they held all the dynamite. And you can see they were ready to make that quarry deeper, but they stopped because of the pressure of the water. So it's a little bit of a look at the ancient past of industrial past of mining as well. So you get this place very few people have been to, you get this incredible sights underwater, and then you get this really interesting part of history. So for me, it's called Dorothea Quarry in North Wales near Mount Snowdon, which is one of the highest peaks in England as well. So altitude dive, cold water dive, technical trimix dive with a dry suit. Every bit of continuing education you could possibly imagine.
That is amazing. That sounds really cool. That does sound really cool. I can also very strongly recommend some of the Austrian lakes. Lake district around the Salzkammergut, it's called. They call it the heart of the world.
And let's say we've not touched on any of the caverns or caves in the world in this presentation so far, right? The US is littered in underground caves where rivers have taken their path and gone underground. Underwater aquifers, underwater caverns, underwater caves. No matter what your level, if you don't have to be a technical diver to go cavern diving, there is underwater lakes that you can dive in. You can walk down and dive in a lake, but it happens to be underground. And I realised I said underwater lakes when I meant underground lakes, by the way. All lakes are underwater, underground lakes. And so many environments that we've not even touched on in terms of fresh water. That's why people should get themselves involved.
100%. Thank you so much. I think that's it. That's all we have about freshwater ecology today. So all we can say is head on over to Scuba Go. The program is live, so a lot of our training centers are already educated at this point, and they can teach this program. So you can go over to Scuba Go and find a course near you. A lot of them can actually even happen online, or you can go find your local dive center and maybe dip your toes into some fresh water.
Yeah, go ahead. Like Corinna said, we've got something like 100 pros now out there. We launched this to them before you. So they've done their background research. They dive in these environments regularly. They are the fountain of knowledge. Head over to Scuba Go, find your training on Scuba Go, and then book it either in person with dives or digitally online. But we really hope you enjoy the Freshwater Ecology program. We'd love to get your feedback. So go ahead, comment and share. Tell your friends about it and let us know when you've completed the program.